Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting on this date of, is it May 3rd,
Mhm.
2021? Tonight we have Becky Walsh, who will be seated for John Mahoney, and Richard Caratu, who will be seated for Ben Buttis. For those, well, for those people who are joining us, the way the meeting is run is that we'll call the meeting to order, which we've done. When we call your case, we'll ask that you please identify yourself and the property in question. State your request for the board. Please be sure to identify a hardships and the reason for your request and the reason for your hardship. Remember, your hardship cannot be financial in nature. It runs with the land. The board will then ask you questions, after which you will be able to, will give other folks an opportunity to present and a chance to speak. We'll ask you questions, and then you'll have other opportunities to speak again and sum up your request. We are recording the meeting, so please be sure to state your name. Once the board goes into business session, we won't be able to gather any more information. So please try to tell us as much as we need to know before we go into the business session. Where we'll discuss and then be making our decision. There are 5 voting members on the board, and it takes 4 positive votes to be granted a variance. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, Lynn, could you take roll call for us?
Sure. Laura Edmonds,
Present?
John Mahoney is absent. Ben Bilas is absent. Jessica Cardone,
Present. She's here.
Present.
here.
Muted.
Luke Toshjian,
Present.
Becky Walsh,
Present, sorry.
that's okay. Richard Caratu
Present.
and Cynthia Dull.
Present.
Okay, Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, great. So we'll start with 411 South Avenue. Upon application of John and Hutton Cole, owners for a variance, section 3.5 D.1 to allow coverage to exceed 266 square feet for a covered patio for property in the A residence zone, map M, block 51, lot H1. And is there someone here who would like to speak for that variance?
I'm John. This is my wife Hutton. Can you see us?
Yes, hi, John and Hutton.
Hi. Quick question before I launch, and that is, when do we have a response from the board?
You'll have it at the right,
This,
as soon as we hear all our facts, and you'll hear our discussion, and we'll be able to vote right before you sign off. So
Oh,
you will hear
great.
tonight.
So we have what has become an older house here in town, and we found that because the fabric of the neighborhood has changed, that due to zoning and I guess cultural things, that what we used to enjoy for privacy in our backyard has kind of been eclipsed by the elevation that houses go up to nowadays. So we're surrounded by new houses. We've got the old house in the neighborhood, and we find that our sense of privacy has been abrogated by these bigger houses. And we're on great terms with all our neighbors, and we certainly don't mind sharing our backyard activities with them. But at some point, it becomes a little oppressive. And that if we would like to build an addition, a covered porch. As you stated, it'll exceed the coverage by 266 feet. I believe I did the calculation correctly. And that will allow us to use our backyard with a little greater sense of privacy. And that's really it. It's not complicated. Am I missing anything, Mrs. Cole?
No, sometimes we just feel as though we're in a little diorama there in our backyard. And it'd be nice to be able to enjoy the outdoor space with some privacy.
Lynn, is there any way you can show us that, I know I looked on it online earlier, but the, maybe if we can see it as a group, what the Coles have submitted for us, just so we can take a look at it as a group?
Sure. Do you want to see the survey or do you want to see the plans?
Any board members have preferences?
The survey first, maybe?
Okay.
And maybe the Coles can explain exactly like what their, you know, what their intention is there.
Sure, we'll give it a try.
Okay.
I have a question. Is this a covered patio or is it a porch?
Well, I guess that's a question of semantics. The floor of this structure would be at grade. And the roof would be approximately 9.5 to 10 feet above that. So it's a single-story structure at grade.
So is the floor framed like a
No,
Porch,
the
or is
floor
it-
is hard, concrete.
like stone?
Yeah, well, like concrete.
Okay. So it's like a concrete slab or bluestone or something like that with a roof over it.
That's precisely correct.
And there's an existing patio there, correct, now?
Yes,
And is it going, and what you've got proposed, is that bigger than what's currently there?
No.
It's actually smaller.
It's actually smaller.
But you're not,
Let me restate that, please. The slab would be the same size, but the roof area, the covered area would be smaller.
So are they legally non-conforming right now, Lynn? Why would they need the variance?
They're over coverage right now.
Okay.
And the house was built back in the 40s and they made some additions along the way to structures. They have a variance that they obtained in 97 for the front, for the patio, I believe it was. That's set back 27.4 feet where it should be 30. So along the way, they probably met the requirements, and then the requirements have changed since the last time they've made changes to their structure.
Okay.
This is Becky Walsh. Do you propose to enclose this porch?
screen.
With insect screens, so it would be, I guess, what's frequently called a single season patio porch. I don't know.
So it wouldn't be heated or anything?
No.
It will not be heated.
Okay, is there something else we can look at too? Or is
Oh, I can get you the other stuff. Hold on one second.
Yikes, this will be my handiwork.
so the existing patio doesn't count in coverage, but it will count as coverage because it's going to be defined as because it's going to have a porch after this, I mean, a roof after this, Lynn?
Yeah, because In building coverage, if it's just a covered walkway, it would count for coverage, just like breezeways would count for coverage.
Patio just without it would not.
That's what I was saying. So the existing one doesn't count towards coverage, so that probably answers the question before. But when they add the roof, it then counts as coverage.
Yes.
And what is the
So
roof?
the crosshatch, the blue cross hatching would be the new covered area. And the dark outer greater perimeter outline. Yes, that's correct. That's the existing terrace or paved area.
So the roof isn't gonna cover the whole thing.
No,
That's correct.
And what is the roof gonna be made out of?
Well, we're thinking it's going to be polycarbonate, something that lets a lot of light through, because what we're having to balance here on our end is we don't want to interrupt too much light coming into the existing house from those north facing windows. And so we've got to balance that with this new structure. So polycarbonate panels that are translucent.
So if this roof didn't extend more than 10 feet from the structure, it wouldn't count as coverage?
No, it would count no matter what, because it's, it would be, I mean, covered walkways, even if they don't have a screen count. And
I'm reading on
breezeways,
page 13 of the bylaws, and it says building coverage excludes that portion of a porch attached to a building that has the porch surface elevated no more than 36 inches above finished grade, extends no more than 10 feet from the building, and does not exceed 40% of the perimeter of the building measured at the points of attachment.
that would be uncovered.
Hmm.
I
It doesn't say
too-
here,
Go ahead.
where does it say? It doesn't, it just says that portion of a porch. Is a porch defined as being uncovered?
Well, if you look up further, what building coverage includes, one above it, covered walkways and breezeways, generally as measured from the exterior walls or columns.
But this isn't a covered walkway or breezeway.
Yeah,
It's a
This is a
covered,
porch that's attached to a building.
it's a covered porch.
I
Yeah,
don't
but
know.
this doesn't make a distinction here between a porch and a covered porch. It just says that portion of a porch attached to a building, because otherwise it would be a patio if it's not covered.
Right.
If it's covered, it makes it a porch. If it's not covered here, then that's just like their existing patio.
Well, if you look
is
on
this law?
page 12, the portion of a roof or overhang, gutter or leader located more than 24 inches from the building counts.
Yeah, but that's
And
when you're measuring coverage for a building that would be covered.
It's roofs count, so it would count. It overhangs the building. It counts, that it's typically counted in New Canaan.
Could you talk a little bit, Lynn, about how the regs have changed since the Coles have done other work, or how they, would they have been able to have this at an earlier time?
It's possible. I mean, coverage was calculated by the size of the lot in the by the zoning district. So it might have counted because they're in an A zone. It was quite a long time ago, though. There was a huge overhaul in 2005 and then another one in 2007.
Right.
And their last zoning variance was in 97, and it was for a front yard setback, and it was the same setback. They had to be 30 feet from the front property line for their setback, and that setback is exactly the same. The house was built in 47, I think it was, based on the assessor's record. So it's been there a significant amount of time.
See, Lynn, it defines in definitions porch. A portion of a structure which has, this is page 32, porch, a portion of a structure which has a roof and a floor and is open to the air without walls or screened in or glassed in openings.
But they said they were gonna screen it in, Luke.
So it's no longer a porch once they screen it in, but they
Correct.
don't need a variance if they don't screen it in. I guess that's how this reads.
Yeah,
Because otherwise, I think that's, they don't, otherwise, as long as it doesn't extend more than 10 feet past the edge of the house, it doesn't count in coverage, whether it has a roof or not. If you look at the definition of a porch, it makes, it's no longer a porch once it's screened in.
So what are you saying, Luke?
I guess my question is, my first question is, do they even need a variance? Because does this count as coverage? And I guess if they're gonna screen it in, that answers it. If they don't want to, if they're not gonna screen it in, then I don't think it needs one. So if we grant a variance, essentially, we're just going through this and we're finding a hardship exists that requires them, that allows them to screen it in. I mean, that's gonna be a hardship to come up with.
right. Because in theory, it's not really once it's screened in or has windows, it's not technically a porch according to the definition, right?
That's correct. The roof doesn't change. A porch can have a roof, just can't be screened in or have windows.
But like a front porch or a side porch is what I'm envisioning. Once you have it screened in, it's technically not a porch.
According to the definition, yes.
Yes, okay, I agree.
What is it when it's screened in?
I guess a part of the house.
Is that what it says?
No, but it doesn't fall under the exception for porches though, because it's no longer an exception.
The reason it seemed to us we needed a variance was because we were already grandfathered in that anything we did to increase the coverage, regardless of it being the 10 feet or the 12 feet 4 inches that we're seeking, was immaterial, that anything we wanted to add was going to need a variance, even if it were 2 square feet, because we were already non-conforming.
This is Jessica Carden. I think we ran up against a similar issue a couple months ago. And I think we had indicated that if it was done more like a pergola structure, where there was some kind of, shading or something overlying the patio that gave a little bit of privacy, but not completely screened in, that would actually not be something that would, based on the definitions here, that would actually fit within the exclusion for building coverage if it had a pergola type approach around the patio.
I think the issue with that one, Jessica, was that wasn't attached to the building here, so it couldn't be a porch.
No, but even here, Luke, with the fact that they've already indicated that, I'm just flagging that as something that they might want to consider, because we haven't even gotten to the question of hardship. And I don't know that, a feeling of lack of privacy when you also abut one of the busiest streets of the town is going to be a particular hardship to that lot. So I'm just flagging this as an option for them to see, a way to get some screening on their property around the patio without actually having to go through the process of a variance.
Yeah, this is Rich Caratu. In theory, based on the definition, couldn't they have a porch, which is defined as a roof, a structure with a roof without sides? So they actually could have what's legally defined as a porch, which would be a structure with a roof, but without walls.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't go more than 10 feet past the building. I can't tell from the diagram how far it goes past the building.
I think 12.
Yeah, I think it, I don't know. It seems to me like it's, if they could make this just a little bit shorter and not have it screened in. I agree with Jessica. There might be an issue on what is the hardship here that requires it to be screened in.
Well, the hardship is that zoning, since the time we bought the property, has changed so much that it's affected the kind of houses that have been built around us, intruding on our sense of anonymity.
But what does that have to do with screening it in? Because the screen you can see through, it's really the roof that adds up privacy, I thought, because they're taller.
Well, I don't know what you're thinking of in terms of a screen, but a screen can be an insect screen, or it could be a bamboo thing that drops down, you know. Call it a curtain, call it a screen.
I don't think something like maybe we could ask Lynn this, but I don't think something that drops down like a curtain would be an issue. I think it's like if it's a screened porch, it becomes an issue because then it's no longer a porch, I guess, here. Like a permanently screened, you know, like if it's basically has windows but no glass and just screens, then that's an
Right.
issue.
Seems more like a part of the, like an extension of another room.
Correct. That's the
Right.
distinction that's made here, as opposed to if it's open to the outside and you had bamboo things that drop down. I don't think, at least I wouldn't care. Maybe that's a Lynn's the enforcement officer, but I think if it's a curtain or something seems pretty temporary to me.
Right.
And this is Becky Walsh again, and I think actually that's a great idea of having a bamboo shade that you can roll up and down, because that also helps you with the
Like,
light factor that you were worried about, so that, you know, during the day, if you weren't sitting out there on the terrace or the porch, wanting your privacy, you could have that bamboo shade up and you could have plenty of light going into your house.
And this is Rich Carritu. One could argue the bamboo shade would give you more privacy than a screen would.
Mhm. Have you spoken to the neighbors? Were letters sent out, Lynn?
I believe they sent out letters,
We did.
because I thought we have it in the file, actually.
Yeah, I was in there when I was clicking through on the website.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I mean, I don't have any, I do think it's unique to their property in that it's a much larger property than the houses around it. You know, and I don't know if that creates a hardship. I think though that I'm kind of struggling with the hardship problem, because it seems like the issue is that they would need a variance for us to screen it in, unless, because I think they could make it so it's 10 feet past the house, no more than 10 feet from the building. And theirs is 12. I don't see a reason they couldn't cut it back 2 feet and maybe make it a little longer, a slightly different shape to get the same size. I just have trouble with the hardship, because the hardship seems to be that it's going to be screened in. And
What if the screens are retractable? Like a bamboo shade, but it's a screen.
I don't know.
Well,
What do you do?
it's a Rich Carritu. If it's not considered permanent, that you could roll it up and down, I don't see why the difference would be, in my opinion, only my opinion, to the bamboo shade. So if you want to put a screen that rolls up and down, and in theory, it could be rolled up, in my opinion, again, only my opinion, I don't see a difference.
Yeah, I would think, you know, just looking at how fixtures are treated under regulations and laws, like if it was something where the screens could be removable from the actual covered part of the structure over the patio, then I would think technically it wouldn't be much different from a bamboo roll down type of screen or shade.
I mean, the definition is a porch is a portion of a structure which has a roof and a floor and is open to the air without walls or screened in or glassed in openings. Yeah, so I would think a screened in opening is like if you had a permanent screen, like a window screen, you know, but no glass behind it, or if it was stapled over the wood or something. But if
Yeah.
it's something you roll up and down, I don't know. Maybe Lynn has an opinion on this. I would just like to try to avoid issuing a variance if we don't have to, because I think it's gonna be hard to think of a hardship here.
yeah, we're trying to work with you to try to give you some ideas on how to get
No,
the-
we appreciate that. You're focusing on something that we hadn't even considered, because it seemed like it was splitting hairs that you wouldn't be concerned with. We are planning on using phantom retractable insect screens, because for those other months of the year when we can't be out there, or when we don't have to worry about insects, these screens would be, they go up into housings, they're motorized, they're very cool things. And it would be open then.
That sounds pretty cool.
It's
Well-
almost like a window treatment in a way, you know?
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
They're
guess it's not
retractable
permanent.
insect screens and, but not wanting to try and finesse this too much, we're still going to be stuck with some doors and such. Are those going to become an issue with the building inspector or the zoning inspector that he says, what about these doors you still have here? You
Yeah, I
gotta take them down and put them away for the season.
I don't know.
I didn't know there were doors.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Gotta have a way to get in and out of the
Well,
place.
now, can you have a door from the house into the porch? You just can't have a door from, this is Rich Carey too. And you could, I believe in a porch, you could have like a front porch of a house. You could have a door from the house into the porch. You just can't have a door from the porch into the backyard.
But what he's saying is when they're back there using it, they're not getting eaten by mosquitoes, they'd have like a screen door.
Yeah, I mean, this is our main access to half of our property.
Yeah.
Kind
You
of
need a
need a,
door.
But couldn't we take the screen door off?
let's see where they go with this.
Okay.
I mean, I know we don't, we're talking about 266 square feet.
Jason Gray.
Now, Lynn, has this, just a question, Lynn, has the zoning changed since the original property? Has the zoning laws changed to make this more restrictive since they owned the property, or?
Well, that's what I was asking. I mean, would this be considered a de minimis ask?
No, de minimis isn't like an exception, I don't think. So this isn't a patio because it has a roof. That's what the definition of patio is. It can't have a roof.
The porch?
It's a porch. Yes, let me go back up to coverage.
No,
building.
right, it's a porch.
That's what happened with the other person is it wasn't attached, so it wasn't a porch. It was a patio, and it wasn't a patio because it had a roof.
Yeah, basically, you're right, Luke. I mean, it would have to extend no more than 10 feet from the building and would not exceed 40% of the perimeter of the building measured at the points of attachment for them to be able to have it be excluded from coverage per the regulations.
Yeah, so I think they cut this back 2 feet. They have those retractable doors like they were screens, like, because they're not permanent. And they, they have it open like a porch. I don't know what you would do about the door though.
Well, if they cut it back to 2 feet, theoretically, they wouldn't have to worry about the door because it would be excluded from coverage. They could probably go with.
They put the screens if they have if they.
No, because the
miss-
door would be, because to be a porch, it can't be screened in. And if they put I guess if you have a door, but no screens on the window, does that mean it's screened in? I guess not. You just have a door to a porch. I don't know what screened in means. It's obviously not a defined term.
Well, screened in to me would have, they'd be permanently there, which means they would have to have some sort of way to hold on. So if is it a metal structure? Some sort of metal framing for the screens to fit in.
Right. Now, can you have, it's Rich Carey too? I know this may sound odd, but can you have a retractable door since you're going all through the trouble of having retractable screens? Can the door be retractable?
I know that such things exist, but we don't want to do that. That's, you go to Home Depot and buy that for your double wide. No,
And I
thank you.
understand.
Yeah, why don't we, so could you make it so it complies with all the requirements, except it has a door? We cut it back to 10 feet. I don't know, I'd be inclined. I don't want us to make a technical argument here over it has a door that opens or not, and does that count as a screened in? It says screened in, I don't know. I think it could be arguable that it's not screened in if it has no screens anywhere, but it has a door, because it's not screened in, it just has a door.
Well, I want to avoid a problem later on. And so my question is, the screens that we're anticipating using, they roll into a housing that's attached to the beam across the opening. I don't want to arrive at looking for a CO and the guy says, well, yeah, but you got to take those down and put them in the winter. Take
No,
them somewhere and store them. They can't stay here. That would be disappointing. So, I mean, we want retractable screens. That's part of our plan. If that had to be written into the building permit, I guess that's fine.
I mean,
Um,
I hate to say how I'm gonna vote or not, but I mean, I definitely, if this is gonna go back to comply with the requirements for a porch, with it being 10 feet. And this being definitely a gray area about whether or not it's screened in or not, if it has retractable screens in the door, I think it's such a technical argument at that point that I don't see a reason why we wouldn't grant, I wouldn't vote for it.
I agree with Rich Carey too. I agree with Luke. I wouldn't see a reason why I would not vote for it either.
I think you're helping our cause here.
Yeah, we're trying to.
But let me drill down just a little bit more, if I may.
Yeah, please
Push-
do. So we
push my
want
luck,
to
as it
clear.
were. So the 10 feet's okay, but the 12 and a half feet is not okay because of why?
Because then it's no longer a porch. If it exceeds 10 feet, it's not a porch anymore.
It's part of the building.
Well, it's part of the building regardless.
No, a porch doesn't count in the building coverage if it doesn't extend then 10 feet past the building, and if it's not enclosed or screened in.
Luke,
All
it's
right.
Rich-
So I'm back to my same question. If we want the 12 and a half feet, call it what you may, can you give us a variance for that?
Yeah. Luke, if this is Rich Carey too, can we rule that de minimis, just the 2.5 feet?
There's no
There's
exception
no
for
de
variance.
minimis.
There's not like the minimus variance rule. It's not like,
You know, it's gotta have a hardship that runs with this property. And
Well,
look, I live in town too. I know there's no privacy, you know, we're a scene where I live, like there's shared driveways all around me, and I get it. I get there's a struggle, but it's not unique to any in-town property to have, you know, the risk of people with higher structures or otherwise just having, you know, I look at the fact that you are on a busy street bordering with a side street. And so even your backyard is kind of almost not a true backyard the way it's positioned, the house is positioned. So, you know,
but they're also unique in that the lot is unusually large for this area.
I
Yeah,
actually,
it's a double lot.
So, I mean, everyone else around is a quarter acre. Here, they're almost a half an acre. I mean, Jessica, I understand that. I understand that for us to grant a variance, it has to be a hardship that runs with the land, like the topography, you know, the shape of the lot, something like that. Here, there's a shape of a lot. It's twice as big. Usually we're dealing with lots that are too small. Here we'd have a lot that's, you know, unusually large for the area. I don't know. I think if they stick to the 10 feet, if it has rolling up screen stuff, it seems to me like it's really gets into the gray area. If it is or is not a porch, you can't tell from the definition then if it's a porch or not. If the zoning enforcement officer came down and said, we think it violates zoning because it has these retractable screens now, and there was an enforcement thing in front of us, I'd say, I can't vote to, you know, uphold the zoning enforcement officer's decision because the town's bylaws aren't ambiguous on what screened in means. I think screened in means like a screened in porch, like you have screens stapled to the wall, you know, like you go to Maine or somewhere, you stay at a cabin and, you know, there's the screens there. That's what I think of as screened in. If it's a temporary type thing, like a curtain that goes up and down, since when have we gotten concerned about things like curtains?
I'm not challenging you on the 10 feet. I think if it were 10 feet, but the couple was asking about wanting to basically have a variance for their original plans. And that is where personally, I'm not convinced that there's a hardship. So
I don't agree. I don't think there's a hardship there either. I think that's not gonna happen, at least, because you need 4 out of the 5 votes for it.
Rich Carey too, again, I mean, if, and I know Lynn is maybe looking it up, but if the original zoning changed from when the property existed, when they were in the house, I mean, that could be viewed as a hardship for 2.5 feet.
Yes,
That's not a
Yes.
hardship. Because we're supposed to move people towards complying with zoning over time. We're not supposed to move people away from it.
Yeah, but the zoning, the house has always conformed until we wanted, it was built in the late 40s. It conformed up until the 90s. And then it fell further out of compliance with additional zoning changes since the turn of the century.
Right. It's Rich Caratu again. I empathize with that point.
I do too. I just don't know if that's a grounds to grant a variance.
For 2.5 feet, I would be inclined to. But that's just me, it's Rich
It's
Caratu.
not inherently the 2.5 feet, though. It comes down to the coverage request, right? So that's really what it comes down to.
Well, I don't want to take too much of the board's time, but if we could just real briefly explore the fallback position, which is the 10 feet. In that case, we don't need to be here.
No variance?
I think we would still grant you a variance just just so you have it in your record, because it's a little bit ambiguous and you're already in front of us. So I'd be inclined to grant it then.
Particularly
So-
as Luke had noted with the issue of a door wanting to be included, that is where you kind of get into a gray zone. So, I think Luke is right. The approach here to give you the comfort, you had said you didn't want an inspector or somebody to come when you're trying to have it constructed to sort of tell you, you've got to take the screens off and things like that. I think if we had it that ran with the property, you'd have that extra bit of security.
Yeah, I'd be more concerned if they go to sell it or something, and someone says, well, this doesn't comply. I think it would be helpful if there's something, in the record showing that we approved it.
You want the variance in your hand.
Yeah, and we appreciate you, following those rules, because sometimes folks come to us.
Oh, yeah.
After, and that's just not work. Okay, so is there anything that you'd like to add, Mr. or Mrs. Cole?
I think we've pretty well thrashed the thing, other than I guess if you do approve a variance, it will be for something that is not what we wrote up in our application. Will that make the transition to the zoning people?
Yes, right,
Okay.
Lynn.
All right.
Yes, Lynn.
What?
Thank
so
you for hearing us out.
You want it to be a collapse, like you want it to be a foldable or retractable,
I
like
think
curtain wall?
I think he's concerned that the new numbers are not what he wrote, and he just wants to make sure that the town has all that, those are clear facts.
So we'll write up with this minutes, and it'll be in our minutes and in our decision. So, yeah.
And he's specifically asking a retractable screen. So I envision like a tube or something on top of the window or the opening, right?
Correct. A permanent screen door and retractable screens on the openings.
Right. And you'll have that in the minutes of the meeting, if the vote is yes.
And only 10 feet, right?
Yeah, and only 10 feet.
Okay, is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor of this variance? Is there
I think it's a wonderful idea.
Is there anyone here who would speak against this variance? Okay, we're going to go into our business session. Any more comments from the board?
This is Becky Walsh. I did go over to the property today, and actually I was quite surprised at how large the yard was back there, and how much space they have, which you really can't tell from either Crystal Street or South Avenue. So in some ways, I think they do have a lot of privacy. They definitely have people who can look down from a third story, in a house behind them. But so I understand that they're looking for just a little more privacy from those people, not necessarily people on the street. And I do like the idea of, you know, some kind of retractable thing or even a bamboo shade, I think would be nice. I mean, people do that kind of stuff all the time. They put sometimes curtains, you know, on their porches just in the front, just so that people can't see them at night. But so if we can get it to 10 feet, that's all the better.
I think the more conservative cover would work better for me as well. Is anyone, could anyone make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'd move that we approve the application on account of a hardship that runs with the land, provided that the porch depth be reduced from 12 feet to 10 feet from the building. It can have a permanent screen door, but that the screens on the openings be retractable.
I second that motion. Rich Carity seconds that motion.
Okay, Jessica, can you start the vote?
Cardin in favor.
Luke,
Walsh in favor.
Ashton in favor?
Edmonds in favor.
Carity in favor.
Your variance is granted.
Thank you,
Thank you.
folks.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate your hearing us out.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for coming so prepared. We appreciate it.
And also thanks for your service to the town of New Canaan.
You're welcome. We do it for great folks like you. Okay. Let's go on to our continued from our held over. Upon application of Ryan Salvatore Design. This is 96 West Cross Road. Upon application of Ryan Salvatore Design and Deandra Surveying and Engineering, authorized agent for John and Sharon, is it Ferry? Owners for a variance of section 3.5.d.1 to allow building coverage to be 4,830 square feet in lieu of 2,849 square feet for property in the 1 acre zone, map 24, block 203, lot 46. Is Ryan here to speak to us about that?
He is.
Okay. Hi, Ryan.
We can't hear you. Are your earphones plugged in fully?
Let me try this.
There you go.
Okay, sorry about that. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much. I'm joined tonight by Sharon and Jack Ferry, the property owners, and my clients, by my partner, Mary Burr, by Brian Smith at DeAndrea's office, and by Jackie Kaufman at Carmody, Torrance, Sandock, and Hennessy. I want to just highlight one edit. We submitted a revised application between last month's discussion and tonight. Our new request is for a coverage variance of 3,995 square feet in lieu of the 2,846 permitted. So we've reduced the proposed ask by about 835 square feet, or nearly 17%. By way of contrast, just to refresh your memories, the site is split between New Canaan and Stamford, nearly half and half. It's very close to 50% Stamford, 50% New Canaan, which is why, although the site is 1.3 acres, we have limited coverage, and why we're here before you. For basis of comparison, if the entire site were in New Canaan, the regulations as of right would permit 4,017 square feet. So our revision is now below what the as of right request, excuse me, what the as of right permitted would be. I want to highlight as well that although we have made a series of edits to the house, reducing its size and some various other things, the proposed house and all of the improvements are in compliance with all of the other zoning regulations. And it's also important to highlight one thing I didn't mention last time, is that a setback variance was granted for the southwest corner of the house at some point in the past. Excuse me, for the southwest corner of the existing house that's on the property now. So that would be extinguished and we would be in compliance with all of the setback requirements.
Do you have a plan that shows the footprint? I'm looking at this now. Does the revised plan show the footprint of the existing house on it? Usually they
think
put that
we-
on there and I'm not seeing it.
I think
Do
we
you want
do
me,
have
do you want
one
me
in
to
our
bring up your
presentation.
present? Do you want me to bring up your presentation?
Yeah, if you would, that would be helpful. Thank you. I'm not sure what page, but probably 4th or 5th page. Actually, if you use that shows it, but maybe the one before it might be even a little bit more telling. If you zoom in right on the upper part of the house, you'll see the overlay of proposed versus existing.
It's very hard to see that.
See the light gray line?
Okay, so to the north, is the top of this, where's the arrow on this?
That's the east.
To the east,
North is to the right side of the page.
to the east, so you're making it non-conforming, I mean, more conforming. in that
Correct.
respect.
That's correct.
And it's impossible to sit this whole house, you can't, under the zoning, straddle the line with the house, correct?
Correct. The New Canaan zoning regulations do not permit that.
And you couldn't move this all to Stanford side, because then you run into wetlands, correct?
Correct. That's exactly right. I want to highlight also that I think in many respects, this application is so different from probably 95% of the other applications you see, in so much as, in a strange way, we're before you asking you to move us closer to conformity with the rest of the properties on the street, rather than diverging relative to them. And that's because they all have a situation where they're not confronted with this lot line. It's not every site on the street. The south side of the street, there are several properties, but in large part, that is the case on the street. And the other thing that I want to highlight, because this came up in the conversation last time, is the comparison of this scenario relative, for example, to a site where you have an existing non-conforming structure or an existing non-conforming site and looking for additional coverage because the site is too small. In that case, the net result of a coverage variance is the risk that the site becomes overbuilt. There is no such risk here. In fact, there's 30% more land area on this site than what the minimum is in the regulations for this zone. So by granting the coverage application, I think you can be assured that there's zero risk that there's any compromise to the massing, streetscape, et cetera, that would obtain in that alternate scenario. I highlight that only because it came up last time. I think it's also worth highlighting that from a precedent standpoint, at the last hearing, there was no neighbor opposition. To my knowledge, there is none that has been registered thus far, and I don't believe any tonight. Obviously, if there is, we'll hear from those people. We have one neighbor who has consciously submitted a letter in support, and we have, in this sense, a pretty lopsided allocation of space between the two municipalities. Meaning, it's not like we're talking about a site that's 10% in Stanford, 90% New Canaan. So it really is, I think, a pretty special circumstance that, given those scenarios, does not, in my view, risk an adverse outcome when it comes to setting a precedent, which, for the right reasons, you all need to be concerned about. I want to, I think at this point, ask Jackie Kaufman if she might provide some context around relationship between the site and context of the town plan and some other issues that I thought might be helpful given some of our discussions last time.
Thank you, Ryan. Good evening, members of the ZBA. My name is Jackie Kaufman. I'm an attorney with Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy. And I have, as Ryan just said, I've just been asked to share a little information with you. We have encountered this before in other communities and in this community. And I think what Ryan just described to you as having no negative impact is an important point. Because what we're requesting here, or what the applicants have requested, is a functional or procedural variance. Because the lot includes enough underlying area, in fact, more than more than the underlying zone, 1.3, this just becomes, the hardship is, I think, enhanced or highlighted by the fact that a conforming structure is proposed to you in massing. They are reducing existing nonconformity. It just happens to be that to comply with section 7.3 of the regulations, which requires that where land is in two municipalities must be built entirely on the New Canaan side, requires an area variance. But interestingly, and that has been the interpretation of the town, but something that I think should also help you is when we look at the definition of lot, lot line, parcel, and buildable land in New Canaan, there is no express language that would impose the restriction that has been interpreted to do so. And it's fine that that's the interpretation, but I think that that helps you with the variance, because the regulations themselves are challenging in the way that they're written to a point where they do contribute to the hardship argument, because Connecticut state law does identify that the regulations themselves, when applied to a lot with its unique circumstances, as has been described to you, also contribute to the hardship and present a hardship themselves. But I want to read a line to you first from the Connecticut Practice series by Judge Fuller, who is a leading scholar of land use in Connecticut. And in section 22.9, which identifies agency authority, he writes the following: where a lot is divided by the town line so that it is in two towns, the size of the entire parcel should be considered as to whether the lot meets the minimum area size for either town, with permits issued for use of the lot, regardless of where the building or improvements are being located. And that's important because there is no case law that is really on point. It often comes up in the sense of subdivisions, but not with these themselves. So Judge Fuller's interpretation of some of the existing case law, which deals with this issue of subdivisions into municipalities, he applies here to coverage and encourages people to, the way he's interpreted this case law, to include the entire lot. So what Ryan and his clients have done is looked at what that would be and have designed a house now that would respect that that conclusion of Connecticut law. I'm happy to submit that to you or to Lynn if you'd like to look at that again. So when we look to the definition of lot in the New Canaan zoning regulations, it's called a parcel of land capable of being lawfully built upon in conformity with these regulations and may contain one or more zone units. Doesn't restrict based on a split. The lot line is a boundary which separates a lot from another parcel or street, notably not a town line. And a parcel is defined as the land contained within one continuous property line. Again, no distinction. Buildable land is defined as land area or a lot or parcel exclusive of any classified area as wetlands, watercourses, floodplains, or containing pre-development slopes greater than 25% as defined by a 10-foot change in grade in a horizontal distance of less than 40 feet. So again, with no distinction. And then section 7.3 just simply says that all parts of a building used for dwelling must be entirely located within the town. So there is nothing else in your regulations that would keep you from granting this variance or would set a precedent that would not otherwise be controllable, because you do have these distinct definitions. But in a situation like this, where we are completely split and where there are wetlands, it does create a hardship for the applicant. As part of your goal too in reviewing the variance request, in addition to identifying a hardship, we have to demonstrate to you that it's the minimum necessary to afford relief. And again, in reducing the size to meet the, or actually be just under the amount that would otherwise be permitted by law if the entire parcel were in New Canaan, or if employing Judge Fuller's interpretation of the case law, that's what's before you now. That meets the minimum necessary to afford relief standard. Here, again, also it's unique. Just based on the specific
So
location.
if it's your
Wetlands,
position
not
that, if it's your position that they, it sounds to me like you're saying they don't need a variance. So if it's your position they don't need a variance, then why are they applying for a
Oh,
variance?
no,
under
that's not what,
3.5.1?
I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that at all. They do need a variance because they cannot, the regulations now prevent them from using the full size of the lot in determining the coverage.
Correct, and you're saying that there's no cases on point on this, but one commentator thinks that our zoning regulations might not be correct, is what you're saying.
Your zone, no, it's not that it's anything is correct or incorrect, but when I read you the definitions of 7.3, there's nothing in there that expressly prevents you from granting a variance like this, because here you're a parcel, the entire parcel should be considered. And it's beyond commentator. This is the leading scholar in land use law in Connecticut, that the size of the entire parcel should be considered as to whether the lot. And I should say that this also comes in under interpretations of agency authority. So you can use the entire lot here in calculating this for the purposes of coverage. And the reason is because the interpretation of the town is that the building coverage must all be located in New Canaan. 7.3 says that here. So if the entire building must be there, then a variance is required to allow more coverage than would otherwise be would be allowed, even though they have the entire parcel. Again, it's functional and procedural. If there was no division here, you could build a lot of building of the size that has been presented to you without issue. We see this sometimes with setbacks, where you have a very large piece of land or right of way between the street and say where the property line starts. And so it's considered a functional variance as well, or a procedural variance, because the land exists so that you meet the setback in spirit, but it doesn't in its actual measurement. And the same is here. The same is true here.
Okay,
But
so before you reference this, I'm getting confused here, because
I'm sorry.
our zoning, you're saying, says we only counted the land in New Canaan. That's 7.3 in determining coverage.
Mhm.
But you're saying a commentator or an author or whoever he is says that
Judge Fuller.
says that we should, but not in the decision, in his treatise or whatever, says that we should count both areas in determining. So isn't there an inconsistency between the two, is what you're saying?
And that is why a variance is required.
Well, not because of what this author says, but because 7.3 wouldn't, it's not allowed under 7.3, but nothing says our 7.3 is incorrect, is there?
No, and I'm not suggesting that. You have the authority to put that into your zoning regulations. Planning and Zoning Commission has adopted that. Not saying it is unconstitutional or limited by statute, but where you have this type of issue, Judge Fuller has said the entire area should be calculated in determining the coverage.
Yeah, this is Rich Carey too. Should this be addressed in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission to change the law of the town?
No, it's adopted that. I mean, certainly at some point when it can be removed or revised, and it is but there right now, that's what the zoning regulations state. And so you have the authority because of that. That is when an applicant comes to you as the ZBA, and you have the ability to vary what the regulations say if a hardship is presented to you. And certainly in this instance, it would. As you go a little bit further up West Cross Road, the division between the streets, or I'm sorry, between the two towns, it starts to diminish. So if you go up, there's less and less land in Stamford as the road progresses. So this does also speak to the uniqueness of it. We're split right down the middle. So some of the neighbors here don't face the same challenge that this particular neighbor does. And what I think also is important that Ryan mentioned is that in granting this variance, and because of that, because all of those other properties do meet or come closer to the 1 acre size, they all have homes that are of a size that are, a certain square footage. So in designing this house, and this also goes to the fact that the proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan and is really the right move for the neighborhood, is that it does create a house that's consistent with the rest of the street, where otherwise it would not. The proposal being in harmony with the general scheme and development is also part of your task, and to show that it's just not contrary to public health, safety, and welfare. So we have a residential zone here. We're proposing a residential use that is consistent with the sizes of the properties on the street, which are all within the 1 acre zone. The road is developed with other residential lots. They're all similar size, similar improvements. So it's sensitive in its design that it will be consistent with those properties. It's in harmony and in character. It keeps in character with the surrounding community. And there's no other zoning issues, as Ryan has pointed out to you.
So
And
Ryan,
this
they can't put this on the Stanford side because of the wetlands. It has to be on one side or the other. Stanford's out, which means New Canaan's in. This complies with, the setbacks and everything else. And it's becoming more conforming.
Correct.
All correct.
Okay.
This is Jessica Carter. I just want to clarify, if the whole parcel is considered the 1.3 acres, I believe, what it's coming in at is 3,985 square feet, which is shy of the little over 4,000 that would have been permitted if the 1.3 acre lot was entirely New Canaan, correct? I just want to confirm that point,
Correct.
because I think we got a little off track from what that was going into the deeper legal discussion. I just wanted to get the facts of that and the lot. Basically, for everybody, based on last month to this month, you actually reduced the plan by over 800 square feet. And per the zoning, you also have, an increased coverage allotment because it is a 1-story house as well for our zoning regulations. So, I think generally there was some indications from the board that if you had come down below the 4,000 or so, that there would be a more favorable consideration of this, because it is obviously a unique land parcel with the division between the two towns. I certainly think you did a great job with cutting a very substantial amount of square footage from the redesign, and it still looks very aesthetic and, obviously would be, helpful in the sense that you're also removing some other variance issues that were, granted in the past. So I'm just indicating that for me, I'd be more inclined with this one based on there being an actual legal hardship with the lot being so unique, and also with having the wetlands in Stanford.
Yeah, I think that the lot line issue, I don't think there's any precedent or anything, A, in our decision. So I think that's an irrelevant point of precedent or not. And B, I think this is unique because the wetlands force it all into New Canaan. If there's a next lot up and has more room in Stanford than New Canaan, maybe they could put it in Stanford if they don't have wetlands. I think the wetlands are kind of forcing the issue here.
Right.
Not so much as the lot line. It's just only somewhere to put it.
Wasn't
I'd
there
agree with that.
something with the height the last time? How is that? Wasn't there, do I remember something with the height? Was that changed?
Yeah, so there was a discussion about whether we might apply portions of the section 3.7E, which regulated the height of the building, which for all intents and purposes is moot at this point, because that was an argument put forth as a way to rationalize the amount of square footage over and above the 4,017 that we had initially asked for. So now, just to confirm that earlier question, 4,017 is what would be permitted as of right, without any, as long as we met the height regulations, which we do, and we're asking for 3,995, which is obviously below that.
So only a variance as to the coverage now.
Correct.
Is the porch a covered porch or not?
There is a entry porch that is covered, which interestingly, I was making notes of it. We have included it in our coverage calculation, so I feel insulated on that matter. But we might be able to pick up another 25 square feet or so.
Okay.
This is Rich Caratu, just for the record, if there wasn't wetlands and the house could be on the Stanford side, you wouldn't meet the Stanford coverage regulations either, in theory.
Honestly, I haven't done the calculations, so I don't know. I think we'd have other issues though. There's actually, the topography gets pretty steep as you go back on the site as well. And we might have some height issues as a result. So I don't, probably not given the, you know, the house. I'm just thinking out loud on the issue though, not having studied it in a lot of detail.
Yeah, again, I hear that, and I think that's the hardship here to what Luke was alluding to, is wetlands and the topographically that I did, you know, note. It is interesting though that the powers that be in the town do have this rule that it all has to be on one, judged on, you know, just the New Canaan side. You know, that is a rule that someone should explore whether that makes sense or not, but that's not for us to determine. But I think the hardship is a little bit easier to get to because of the two issues with the sloping and with the wetlands.
Well, Rich, the logic of that makes sense because you don't want a tiny lot with a tiny amount of New Canaan that they put it on and the whole other part and the other with it like straddling two lots and things like that. Like it makes sense as a whole. That's probably why there's no case of saying you can't do it. You know, there's nothing wrong with the bylaws. It's just here it's a unique lot because they're forced into one location because of topography and the wetlands. You look at the grading plan, you know, and you can kind of see there's nowhere else to build a house.
Yeah, I agree.
Strategically, also, it enhances the tax base for the town to have the entire property, developed property
That's the
located there.
That's the answer.
But I'll also say, in designing a one-story home, which you know, we don't often see. You don't often see a home, you know, just of modest proportions for new construction in town. It does also meet, if you are inclined to approve this variance, as you're meeting the goals of Section 5 of the Town Plan of Conservation and Development by enhancing livability and providing for a diverse housing portfolio.
Okay, Becky, do you have anything?
I just had one question just to clarify. So I was reading your original application. So just to be clear, you because of the building height and well, because you got the square footage down, you don't need to apply for a special permit. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And now I think you've done a good job in reducing the square footage. And I looked at the actual plan, the interior plan, and you know, you've made rooms smaller, and obviously it would have been preferable to have the original plan, but you've come back to us with what we've asked for, and that is some kind of concession. And as we said before, we're more open to granting a variance if somebody will come back and rework the plans and, you know, try and get a little bit closer to where it should be. You do have a hardship as far as I'm concerned with the wetlands and the topography, as you were just talking about. So I think, Luke, that's where we could get the hardship.
Is any of these retaining walls, none of them are more than 4 feet, right? The tallest one's 4 feet exactly.
Ryan, do you want to comment? I don't know off the top of my head. If not, I'm sure we can adjust grading to make sure we're compliant.
For the record, Brian Smith, DeAndrea Surveying and Engineering. On the southwestern corner, we have a 4-foot exposure on the retaining wall. We'll restudy and look to make sure that all retaining walls are under 4 feet and adjust the grading slightly if necessary. But I believe we're at 4-foot maximum exposure at this time.
Is the height of retaining wall measured from the base, or is it measured 10 feet out like a structure, or however they measure for a structure? Brian?
From the base.
From the base? So if it slopes down, you don't have to measure 10 feet out. You could, as long as right from the bottom to the top is 4 feet, you're okay?
I believe so. I'll have to verify that through the New Canaan zoning regulations, but we're not showing massive slopes downgrading of the grade of the retaining walls anyway. But if it does go 10 feet, we can make that adjustment properly.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I was just wondering because I don't want this to become an issue. We had a building before where that was an issue, where they weren't depicted on the plan and they came back with more than 4 feet.
I will check and verify that.
And I don't think anyone here would have a problem if the wall was 4.5 feet or something. Just we're not granting a variance for it. We don't like doing ones after the fact.
Okay, Ryan, anything else?
Not for me.
Okay.
Thanks.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor of this variance? Mr. Farady?
Oh, I'm good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Is there anyone here would speak against this variance? No. Okay, we're going to go into our business session. Any other comments from the board?
Fine moving to allow it on account of the topography of the lot and the wetlands. And that it's overall increases conformity by fixing that setback issue.
Rich?
Yeah, I agree with Luke, and also they rectified the height. I think either Becky or indicated. So I think I'm inclined to approve.
You good, Jessica?
Yes, got a noisy household right now. Yes, I am. I think with the changes made, the fact that it would conform with what would be anticipated if the whole parcel is deemed in New Canaan. And when you look at the hardships that went with the lot as far as the wetlands, the topography, and still the strange circumstances that, yes, I think they've done a good job.
And I know you told us how you're feeling also, Becky.
Yep, I think they've done a good job.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move. I'd move to allow the variance. Well, I'd like to, I'd move to allow the variance on account of the unique topography of the lot and the wetlands, and to making the property more conforming overall by fixing the setback issue.
Pardon, second?
How about we move to approve the revised plans?
Yeah, the revised plans.
Yeah.
Okay, Jessica, you want to second that?
Well, should we combine the two
Okay,
points? So
Correct.
I would say the motion should be that we move to approve the revised parent plans for the variance for just under 4,000 square feet. And this variance be granted in light of the fact that there is a topography and also wetlands issue that runs the parcel, which has unique circumstances as well, straddling two towns.
I'll second that.
okay. Becky, will you start the vote?
Walsh in favor?
Edmonds in favor?
Tash in favor?
Carden in favor?
And Caratu in favor.
Okay, your variance is granted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, talk about our minutes. Do the board have any other, did you have a chance to look over our minutes? Can we approve them from our last meeting?
Oh, Ben's not here to get the typos.
Yeah, from the March meeting. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi.
Can we have a motion to approve the minutes? Did we look through them?
Were they attached to the email? I'm not.
I don't know, were they there? I didn't see them.
I didn't see them either.
Yeah, I don't.
I was just searching. I don't know that I've seen the minutes to try to
Yeah, me
approve. I was
neither.
just checking as well.
We might have to approve these next month. I don't know if we've
Yeah,
received the
Lynn,
draft
are
minutes.
they, I don't think any of us saw them, so I guess we can't.
Don't we also, I mean,
That's fine.
John and Ben were both seated last month, correct? So we would probably need at least John.
Yeah,
here
we need
For the
four.
minutes?
Yeah, I thought we have to have 4 of the
Oh, right.
original.
But I think all of you were at the meeting, but we can hold them off for next month if everyone didn't look at them or they weren't in the email. But
I don't think they were in the email. It would be normally
That's fine.
find the draft on the website because I was looking there. I didn't see it
yeah,
readily.
I don't think normally they're attached to the link, and I don't think they're on the link this time. I think we just have the planner's memo and the agenda.
Yeah,
So
that's all
I
that
think
saw.
so. I think that maybe we neglected to put them up. So apologies, and we'll send them around again.
That's okay. We'll get them.
Okay.
Okay, any other business? No, thank you so much. You guys are terrific. Really appreciate your help. You're all so thoughtful and always so prepared and so great. Can't do it without you. So really appreciate it.
I'd move to close the meeting.
I second that.
Cardin in favor.
Okay, meeting is adjourned.
Okay, have a good
Bye,
night,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good next one.